What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Essential Libertarians. It has been a minute. I am your host, Kareem, here with my amazing co host, Daniel Betro, live from Reno.
Yep. And this is very exciting, especially for libertarians, because like everyone I know who considers themselves a real libertarian or a Mises type has been excited about this for a while. It's finally here. It's going to be a big deal. And I mean, we really don't know what to expect. But I know there's going to be a lot of people, a lot of major players. Ron Paul, for example, is a really, really big person. And I think like the importance of this event is that in 2008, 2012, right, you sort of had this Ron Paul revolution. And I think while the Mises is focused mainly on the local level right now, which I think is good and efficient, I think in 2024, I don't know who it is. I'm not sure if it's going to be Dave Smith, but you're going to get that whoever that national candidate is going to, it's going to be like another Ron Paul type thing. Because while we all hate DC, while we know the local resistance and nullification at the local level is important and maybe even easier to get things accomplished, but we do know at the top of the level when it comes to federal elections, they're more watched, they're more viewed, and if we can get a candidate up there at the federal level, you can get another Ron Paul moment and make the Mises Caucus even bigger. So I think this is like a step in, within a set of other steps leading up to the 2024 election, which I think is going to be a major, major election for the Mises Caucus in general.
Yeah, and there's two issues on the table. I'm glad you brought that up. Yes, Ron Paul will be here. I'll tag you in that video, or I will tag you in that photo. So super excited for that. Super excited for the bash and for business and for everything that's going down. Now, the big thing is there's two issues on the table. Unfortunately, in America, people don't realize like local governance is where it's at. Your local government can say you can't have these type of plants. You can't have chickens. You can't do this. You can't play music at a certain time. That's some pretty big stuff, especially if you have a specific lifestyle.
And they can even supersede the federal government, which is a major thing. And in some cases, and most people don't know that, like federal government, people's conception of the federal government is that it supersedes the state level. But as we've seen in previous times and in other times, the federal government has this sort of aura around it, and that control and that authorization is almost entirely dependent on the state's willingness and cooperation to follow the federal government. And in many times in Supreme Court cases, we've seen the states disobey the federal government. And at the end of the day, what can the federal government do other than assert force through harm or through threatening to the states that they're going to come after them, but they won't. Right? What is the federal government going to really do? So all they have is threats. All they have is verbal threats, and that's it. They really have nothing else to enforce their rules and their policy.
Yeah. So I think it's this simple. Like California said, we're not doing your immigration laws. Okay. I don't personally want to live in California, but okay. That's what they want to do. That's how they want to roll. Texas and Alaska don't want to follow your gun laws. Not much they can do. It would be cool if Pennsylvania, just on a side note, didn't want to follow their energy laws because we might be able to tap into our reserves, bring gas down. But I'll make this distinction between local and federal, and we can come back to state later. Local is what's most important, I think. That's how our system works, and people should realize that. Your local government can't affect what you do and how you do it. They just can't. Now, some local governments can be bad. I get that. I'm not here to make the claim that, local governments are great and they'll never be tyrannical. In fact, they can have problems too, but you're closer to them, so you're able to solve that problem. That's why I think Mises focuses a lot on local, which it should do. A lot of those races are also winnable. You can win constable, you can win city council, you can win school board. And that's a good place to start. I think the state is the next level, and that's what I will be running for. That being said, unfortunately, it's not attractive to say, hey, man, this guy's running for city council, even though it's important. People are worried about the federal elections. Oh, who's president?
Yes.
Who's president? Like everything revolves around. And I try and get people away from that. They're like, well, It's just, Biden or Trump. And I'm like, there's
Well,
issues.
sort of. That's sort of the answer to that, right? It's sort of, but
Yeah,
while that's sort of the choices you have at the federal level, you have a lot more diversity at the local level that can either counteract the policies and the decisions of those at the federal level, or just outright supersede them. And that might be through disobedience. That might be just through outright um, non-compliance, which, as we have seen, in one of the perfect examples of this, like the importance of local and state non-compliance to the federal government, because the federal government, as our founding fathers saw it, was going to always move towards tyranny. And this is why you had the Federalist versus the Anti-Federalist debate. Is most of the founding fathers, not all, but most, saw the federal government as a limited structure that needs to be limited. And the moment the federal government expands, it's going to continue to do that, meaning that the federal government's natural state is to supersede the states and expand its powers. And it's going to keep doing that, almost like a fungus or a bacteria will, as soon as it attaches to a material, right, its natural state is to spread and get larger. And it's the same
yeah.
thing with the federal government.
And all governments actually do that. That's not a uniquely federal government thing. But look, when you have power, as George Carlin said, the government doesn't care about you, your family, your friends. It doesn't care. It cares about two things: maintaining its own power and expanding it wherever possible. So if it can expand its power, that's how it survives. And that's how you eventually get what Hobbes called a Leviathan. So while federal government is attractive, local's where it matters. But I'm also here because if you have good messaging on the federal level, and I will say this, I don't personally dislike Gary Johnson or Dr. Jorgensen. In fact, I've talked to Gary Johnson over a format like this. It used to be Google Hangouts, if you've ever used that. And I've met Jo Jorgensen at the state convention. She was reasonably good. I don't like her comments on Dave Smith, but that's a whole other
Or
story.
how she sort of gave in to the whole BLM
Yeah, I
thing.
don't
She
like what
sort of
that
just
she
gave in,
did
and we all
there.
knew what she was doing, and I think she knew what she was doing. She was conceding some to the left to seem virtuous and to give in to the woke crowd. And even though it was a minor comment that give in, still any inch, any centimeter that you give in that direction to quote unquote diversify your party, in the sense that the Libertarian Party has been doing the same thing for a long time, where it doesn't want to hold on principles and stand on principles. Rather, it wants to concede points to both sides so that both sides don't hate it. So it wants to give into the wokeness of the left, but also say we still care about freedom and markets on the right. But you can't play both. You have to
Yeah,
have principles.
that's actually what got me into the Mises Caucus and why I'm here. I saw Angela McArdle, shout out to her, I'll tag her in this video, who said, when you try to appeal to everyone, you appeal to no one. And politicians
Yes.
do that. To be fair, I'm not like, that's not something you're uniquely attacking, because people try and sprinkle a little bit here, a little bit here. Yeah, I'm for socialized medicine, but I like free markets. We got to take care of everybody. But, oh, I'm for this, I'm for that. That was actually a huge problem I had with Trump, to me, because that's how I read his policy. It's all over.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
let me
almost
bomb
too
Syria.
populist.
Yeah, I'll bomb
Almost too
Syria for the
populist.
neocons, but then I'll act like I want to get out of Afghanistan for the libertarians, and then I'll do this for this group, and I'll give this handout for this group, but I'll be against this. And I'm like, dude, it's very clear what you're doing. You're trying to appeal, you're trying to make everybody like you. It's a human instinct, but
Yeah,
unfortunately,
I agree.
it doesn't work. Most people like you, like Ron Paul, to me is very revered because he just stands on principle. He doesn't worry about, like, does McCain like what I do? Does Romney like what I do? Does X like what I do? Same thing with Rand Paul for the most part. And if we can get a candidate like that, now Ron Paul can't run anymore. He's up there in age. He's doing a show, and he's done a lot. He's done, in my opinion, the most for the libertarian movement. But the second best thing we can do is Dave Smith. I can't think of anybody else who would be a better candidate. Now, yes, you could argue Amash has more experience. I'm not gonna say no to that. Amash is a congressman. He's run pretty good. You could probably argue like Jason Hornberger's decent, and I like Spike Cohen. Spike Cohen's good too. But here's the problem. I don't know if any of them are running. Dave Smith has shown interest in running. I want to keep him running by coming to these meetings and being a delegate so he can run at the federal level, so we can have a good vehicle in Mises caucus. And using this vehicle, we can run local elections successfully like we've been doing. We can amplify that with state elections and then even bring it up to federal. And one problem I had with the Youngkin and McAuliffe races, where was the Libertarian? I'm not saying
they weren't even on the ballot, to be quite
that's
frank.
my problem. Virginia, DC, pretty big state. People know what libertarians are there. Washington definitely knows. They're probably on a list. The CIA probably has us on a nice list. And
yeah, they
not
definitely.
the list
Yeah,
be on. The NSA is probably watching now. And you know what? I don't appreciate the federal government always spying on me and never leaving any lights.
but you know what? This is a good segue, Kareem, because okay, we both know because of Snowden and because of many other leakers and the most recent confirmation of what we already knew. What was it, 3 months ago, where it turned out, yeah, the NSA was collecting mass data, even after Obama said they weren't. Yet we already knew that. Everyone knew it, but just because the New York Times confirms it, that means it's now truth. But we've known it since Snowden. He said it. But anyways, the point is if they're collecting all our data, they basically have, if you have a phone number, if you have a phone with a phone company in America and you're on social media, they have your data. They have access to it. That doesn't mean that they're always looking, but they can have access to it, and they're looking a lot from what Snowden was saying. Okay, why is it that even though we have ceded all of our privacy and basically the entirety of a full amendment to the federal government, and they still are not able to get these school shooters and mass shooters, even when they literally say before they do it that they're going to shoot an elementary school up? This shooter, and we can talk about them being trans and all this stuff, but a day before they shot the school up, they said, I'm going to shoot up an elementary school. Where's the NSA? I mean, there's this power that we've ceded, this privacy, it's not even being used in the idea as well because of terrorism. And from what it seems like, that is a lie. And the reason why I'm saying it's a lie is because if we did cede the privacy to the federal government in the sense to stop terroristic attacks and domestic terrorists included, then why aren't they stopping it? There seems to be nothing, right? And we know from data from the CIA, the NSA, and the FBI that they accounted for one terrorist attack since the Patriot Act that was stopped as a result of the privacy that was ceded to them.
Yeah, and I think that one was even BS.
And so even that one was questionable, yeah.
I'm going to call them on their bluff because here's the problem. Not only, let's say they stopped one, but I'll even give them that. I'll give the Jordan Peterson, Dostoevsky argument because I don't like actually just beating people down. I'll actually give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's say they stopped that one. They've encouraged, and this is on record, people to do January 6th. They encourage people who have mental problems, who may have even social problems, like they just have trouble getting a girlfriend or they have mental issues or something's going on. And then they try and recruit them to do nefarious actions. I'm not making this up. Parents have literally found people trying to get the FBI to
look at what happened in the case of Whitmer. Perfect example that's on record and been proven in court. New York Times has covered it since they're the arbiters of truth. You had the majority of people within this case where you had these people who plotted to kidnap the governor. The majority of the people were FBI agents, FBI instigators. The majority. There was 3 or 4, there was 4 people that they were provoking to do this. But the majority of all the people in it and all of the instigators were all FBI agents. And this is on record. And this is a major case.
Which is, to me, that is extremely wild because they are supposed to be stopping this. This is the exact opposite of what it's kind of funny. Government does the exact opposite of really what you want to do. National defense bases everywhere in the world, making it less safe. Antagonize in every proxy. If there's a conflict somewhere that's globally, the U.S. and the MIC are giving somebody something to do something somewhere. I get that's not real specific, but you could get my drift. If you have intelligence agencies that are supposed to gather intelligence, and let me just make one remark that Snowden would say. He said, why don't Why isn't the intelligence counteracting these events? And he said that's not the intelligence job. Even if you have a functioning intelligence department provided by the free market, their job is to gather intelligence and then help somebody like private security or a constitutional sheriff counteract that event.
They're just
with
supposed
that.
to gather information, and that information is a very vast and diverse thing. Information could come in the form of video, audio, text,
Yeah, well, I
written
mean,
letters.
whatever you have, just get information like, so and so said they were going to do this bad thing on this day. Just
Yes.
gather that post and then tell your local sheriff
Exactly.
something's going down. Because let me make it very clear, counteracting these events is not an intelligence activity. It's a law, well, it's a security activity.
Or just a law enforcement.
Yeah,
Because even in an
law
anarchic,
enforcement.
even in an anarchist state, you're still going to have law, and you're still going to have people that enforce those laws. Let's not call them police officers, mind you, because of the negativity associated with that. But you're going to have law officers. There's law, right? And this is the thing that people get confused around anarchy is they, of course, the tried and true anarchy is chaos, but anarchy to most of us that mean it, and there's this joke around people who call themselves anarchists, is that we tell everyone we're libertarians because they won't understand what anarchy means. And it's true. I tell people I'm libertarian because if I tell them I'm an anarchist, they're not even going to know what I mean, and they're going to think like I'm a looter, and maybe I'm an anarcho-communist, which many freaking conservatives think I am.
Like you're an anarcho-communist, you like chaos, move to, back in the Bush days, it was like, if you don't like what we're doing, move to Somalia. I'm like, Somalia is not even that case, because the international community interfered at a nice equilibrium that was there. Not saying I want to live there, but I'm saying it's a good model for decentralization.
I don't know though, because Somalia might be looking pretty good soon. Like for instance, this gallon of water that I bought right here, it's the off-brand gallon of water from the store I live near, and it was 4 months ago. Yeah, 4 months ago, $1.56. I just bought that. It's $3.99. That's insane. And this is the cheapest one in the entire store. You get any of the name brand ones, you're looking at like $4 or $5 for 1 gallon of water. So like what happened to Venezuela, what happened in the Soviet Union, what happened in with Pol Pot in Cambodia, what happened in almost all these socialist communist countries, what happened in Weimar Germany prior to World War II, and all these countries where they decided to go the route of ceding authority to the government, and mainly as it concerns currency. When you leave currency up to a centralized institution, be it a government or let's say the Federal Reserve, a private institution that basically is a government in itself, you then put that institution and that organization responsible for currency and leave them as the sole arbiters of who gets currency, when this currency gets printed, and exactly how much it gets printed. And what that means is that those people then are going to just be like, they're going to move this bottle or this piece of chest whenever they decide, whenever they feel like it, with absolutely no restrictions or regulation, because they're idiots. They don't know anything about the complexities of your life or even the people around your life, right? So they might think it's a good idea to print a bunch of money because a bunch of people are yelling at them to print money, and maybe that's the popular idea. And then what happens when they go for that idea and they print money and they never stop printing money? They then devalue the currency and they cause inflation and then hyperinflation. And right now, I really think, and this is going to sound very extreme, I think that the only way we don't end up like Venezuela or don't end up like the Soviet Union or Weimar Germany or Cambodia is that two things. One, we somehow managed to be so neoconservative as a country and have such a great Kissinger plan that we stop other countries from removing the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. We keep that somehow, which I don't see as possible. Let's say we get super imperialist. We fucking start. We've been doing it for a long time, but let's say we up the ante and we just start toppling countries, and then Russia maybe comes down. We saw what Soros said, but maybe Russia comes down and boom, we swoop in there and do what we do and make it one of our little proxy countries with our currency. Okay, or we dissolve the Federal Reserve. Those are the only two things I see as preventing us from getting to that point.
and you back the dollar by something tangible. Like, okay, fine, we're still using dollars. Like Somalia, they still use the shilling, but let's back it up by some. I don't care actually what
Yeah.
it is.
I mean,
Lumber,
crypto. We could
food,
back it by crypto, for God's sake.
back it by crypto. Yeah, Tether
I'd prefer
works.
like an actual material. That's just me, and people debate with me on this, whether gold or crypto. I think long term, gold and silver are the best, simply because in the case of a solar flare, crypto does not exist. It is only in existence insofar as the internet and the technology that exists on is in existence. Which there's many different, we could talk about many different situations and catastrophes that could cause that entire the entire internet, the entire network to go down, then therefore getting rid of crypto. And you could say, well, that would be temporary, but then what do you do for that time? You just wait until the internet comes back on, until you get your cryptocurrency. That's why I always think gold and silver, and really any of the precious metals, diamonds, all that stuff that's hard, solid stuff, will always be better than crypto in the long term. I think in the short term, gold will never move the way crypto does,
Mm-mm.
nor will silver, and nor will diamonds. But I'm thinking just worst case scenario. Worst case scenario. If you have gold and silver, and even if it becomes worthless, you can still use it for something, right? You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
oh
You can
yeah,
still use it to
it's
kill your
physical, it's
invaders.
tangible.
Yeah,
I mean, food and stuff is still the most important, but yeah, I would say I think
that's
gold and
true. Yeah.
silver, definitely crypto. I'm not crazy about this. Everybody wants to throw the EMP argument.
Yeah, I don't necessarily like that
That's a
argument.
little bit too much. Like, if countries are throwing EMPs at each other at that level, there's something worse that we have to worry about. One, two, if it's on the cloud, technically it's not gone.
And also, this is under the condition that there is no technology to prevent an EMP, which there is. There is
Yes.
technology to prevent EMPs, mind you, very high tech stuff. But there was even this tech developed in when was it? Where was it? I should say. I think it was Germany. I could be wrong. Look, I'm going to look this up. But there's this basic tech that is a it's like a bomb sort of, except when it explodes, it sends out like a shield through some sort of like magnetic. Um, I can't explain it, but it's like a magnetic shield. You don't see it or anything. That if an EMP is to come in around a particular given area, and it does have a limit, that the devices under that shield, because of the magnetic refraction, it wouldn't actually shut the devices off under that particular area. So there is tech that exists to sort of counteract EMPs.
Yeah, and definitely that exists. But yeah, I'd say definitely get your food, get your plants, get your filtered water, get whatever you need to sustain, if you need canned food or whatever. And then on top of that, after you've done that, take a look at gold, crypto, see what works for you, see what you want to do. It's easier to adopt crypto, in my opinion, than gold, but that's fine. People can argue which one they like better. And if someone wants something more tangible, I'm not necessarily upset that they want gold. So, that being said, I think it's going to really come down to, people ending the Federal Reserve, people knowing what it is, and then backing the dollar by something tangible. The neoconservative thing is not only insane, but it would just lead to decline, in my opinion, faster. And nobody really wants it except people like Eye Patch McCain. So,
Yeah, but the neoconservative ideology, for all of its flaws, is highly contagious. And I think the reason why it's highly contagious is because the reason why it's virulent, like a virus, quite literally, is because it provides easy solutions for hard problems. And
yeah,
the easier the solutions, the more appealing they'll look to younger people. And I think this is changing within the conservative community. But I think that for people to look at like global conflicts and war, especially being such a complicated, tricky subject that is dangerous, that is a moral question. It tallies all sort of boxes in philosophical, legal arguments. And I think most people don't want war, particularly in this country, right? The
no,
majority of people don't want war. But I think also what the majority of people are willing to do after they take a step. Okay, we don't want war. Are willing to give power to those who have plans and agendas and certain ideologies that claim to solve the problem of war here domestically. And that's what conservatism does. It basically says, okay, the way that we'll keep peace at home is by making chaos in foreign land. And this is the only way that we can keep peace at home. And the only way we can keep violence and war abroad, by causing it. And maybe you can make a case that works, but that's going to be it's going to be hard to make that case. And the reason why it's going to be hard to make that case, because as you're taking measures to cause chaos in these other countries, you are then forfeiting economic prosperity in your country by the printing of money, by the displacement of arms. Look at what Iraq and Afghanistan did to our country. It did exactly what Osama bin Laden wanted to do. His idea was not to destroy the United States through the attack. He knew he wouldn't destroy the entire United States, but he knew after that, after the buildings followed, there would be the military-industrial complex would bankrupt the entire country, and that would be the falling of the United States. And he seemed to be probably onto something.
Actually correct. Now, granted, hey, the pharmaceutical industry jumped in with beer flu, so it's not entirely that. And there's other things like Medicaid and Medicare, but yeah, on that front, he's correct, because a lot of neoconservatives tried to justify it like, oh, we fight them over there, so we don't have to fight them over here. And I ask, how are they getting over here? They don't know. They're just like, somehow, like people in Afghanistan are going to shoot a portal.
I know, like they just have
we're here
planes.
Because you stopped fighting us, we're just going to pop up.
Remember, they had to steal our planes to attack us, you fucking dummies.
Yeah, and then we had to give them that stuff, and they're still not.
And they were trained and went to flight school and were on record. And the FBI and CIA knew about this, that there were people who were on terrorist watch lists who were taking flight tests that were then in the planes who hit the buildings. So not only did we provide the planes, not only did we provide the location, we provided the training, and our law enforcement, let's call them that, if you can even call them that, had the wherewithal to know that this training was going on and did nothing to prevent it. So at what point do we say we caused 9/11? I don't mean we, the American people, but I mean if the federal government knew about this, just like they knew about Pearl Harbor before it happened, like everything, every single event, like every event that was terrible, the federal government knew about it or had some knowledge about it and failed to act. And Gulf of Tonkin, like it just seems as though the federal government is simply there to carry out its self-interest, like irregardless of what the truth is or what the people expect of it. And then they keep hiding behind the image that they're a necessity and that you can't get rid of them. Oh, you can't get rid of us, though. We can commit all these heinous acts, but you need us, because who's going to tell you what to do?
Exactly. Or who's going to protect you from whatever it is when they're literally annoying you? It's like me literally like beating up a dog. The dog goes crazy. And
Stop beating up dogs. I'm sick of it.
Not Michael Vick, but it's like I kick a dog constantly, and you're like, "Hey, what are you doing?" You're like, "No, I'm just doing this so the dog doesn't get mad and then gets mad and violent." And I'm like, "Aren't you glad I'm here to fight off that?" Like, no, they literally cause the problems, problem, reaction, solution, and say, "If it wasn't for us, well, you wouldn't know what to do, or you wouldn't be able to solve it.
If it wasn't for us, you wouldn't have the problems, which
like,
we would then be able to solve, which then would cause more problems that then we would be able to solve again and cause more problems. What would you do without these problems?
Yeah, what would I do? I don't know. It's like Newsom's like, oh man, let's counteract inflation, print more money and give it to more people. I'm like, tell me you don't understand inflation without understanding inflation. So to me, it's kind of like that old meme with George Carlin. It's like, without government, there'd be chaos. Who told you that? The government. So it's kind of almost a religion. Like my religion's right because my book says it, and therefore my book says it must be true. And religion is a different thing because that's voluntary. I get that, but it kind of goes into here like, well, we have this problem. Well, without us, you couldn't be solved. Didn't you create this problem? Yeah, but you need us to solve it. So it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy of, well, you need this institution. They're going to cause a problem. And then they're going to say, hey, we can fix it. What are the solutions that didn't work anywhere.
And the solutions here's what Soul does in his book, The Vision of the Anointed. So in The Vision of the Anointed, a book from like 1994, 95, that Thomas Sowell wrote. Basically, what he does is he lays out the process by which, in his case, he's considering them the anointed elite, or you could say the liberals, or the neoconservatives, the people who hold power, even the people who hold power that weren't elected. Here's how their process takes place. So there's a crisis, right? There's some sort of problem that occurs, and a lot of the times it seems that this problem was a result from a solution that the anointed or the elite put forth. Okay, so now there's this crisis. Okay, and then after the crisis, there's the solution. Okay, the solution, they say, oh, we're going to do this to solve the crisis, and we're going to fix it. And then you have a great majority of people making the claims that, hey, your solution that you're proposing has A, B, C list of problems. And if you try and just print money, there's a process there. It's probably going to cause inflation. And the arbiters of truth, or the anointed elite, care not about their critics. They're simply doing it from a position of moral virtuosity, and are doing it because they see it as being true. We're talking about intellectuals in a lot of the cases, and political elites. And
they
then
either see it as being true, or I'm even going to go further. Who are a lot of these people listening to? Like, we go to Davos. Who are they getting orders from? Klaus Schwab. What does Klaus Schwab want to do? The fourth industrial revolution, to me, is very clear what he wants to do.
I know.
And it's very simply crashing markets so they can come in and say, hey, we're going to have one sovereign oversee everything. Well, if I wanted to do that, I wouldn't just, come in and break stuff. I'd be like, oh, I want to help you guys. Let me print.
Yeah, we're not talking about the Nazis here. They're way smarter than that. Mind you, Klaus Schwab's dad was a Nazi, a literal Nazi. Not that necessarily means that he's a Nazi. I'm just saying, like, if your friend was like, your friend's dad was a Nazi, you'd be like, oh, that's interesting. So the person who raised you, maybe for the majority of your life, was a Nazi. You'd question him. So I'm just saying, put that out there. But anyways, continue. The crisis, the solution, and then the results. And then after they propose the solution, and that the results happen, and the results are not what they thought they were going to be, and they are exactly how the critics would say that they would be. And we can talk about abortion. We can talk about the redistribution of wealth. We can talk about all these things that have results that they've tried, they've attempted, that have the opposite of what they think they're going to have. And then what the anointed do is say, well, we didn't know, or we didn't have the information, pretend as though it is not their fault. And usually they'll try and throw the intellectuals under the bus and say that, well, I that's what I was told, and that's what was given to me by the experts, and then blame the experts.
And to me, that's like the hide and everything, like Fauci to get rid of the mask. Oh, the experts told me I can't. The experts. So it's just you. To me, that's also another fulfilling prophecy. It's kind of like the Pharisees and Sadducees. Like, you anoint someone an expert who's going to rule in your favor. And then you always go back and say, well, you can't institute or not institute this policy because the experts said no. So you get someone like Krugman, another example. He's like the
Krugman's a Nobel Prize winner. Do you not know that?
Yeah, okay. That means to me about as much as like somebody winning, like,
he won the Nobel Prize for being the best non-economist ever.
Yeah, to me, that's basically like getting a badge on Facebook. It's funny. It doesn't mean anything, but whatever. People like Krugman, Fauci, I can name all these. They're so-called experts, and then really what they are is just kind of like guinea pigs for the establishment to say, oh, well, I'm the expert, so you should do this. And then that advocates personal responsibility. I didn't make that mistake. I listened to the expert. Oh, the one that you hired that was basically going to tell you what you wanted. My yes man said yes. They're not yes men anymore. They're experts. So we've given them the self-anointed title. But
when you research the studies that they proclaim, there's always some organization or group or corporation funding them that they're associated with. So these experts and these studies that they always proclaim and use as empirical evidence and data, usually lying or manipulating details or extrapolating things, not coming to final solutions, or using one study out of 50 studies that say the opposite thing. They're always funded by people who are associated with them. And this is, you know what, the perfect example of this, and it only took me 2 hours to find this. When I might actually go over this while I'm with you. There's so many trails. I literally did straight journalism, but there was a study for ivermectin. I think it was Illinois that proved that ivermectin had absolutely no positive results at all. Like, it didn't benefit anyone who had COVID as far as surviving and as far as the fatality rate goes. Okay, so I look at this study and I'm like, who's funding it? Well, it turns out every organization in there that funded it was associated to major left-wing players, including Soros, including who was the other one? Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, like one of these, and a lot of these what would you call them? Usually funds and foundations that funded the study. Funds and foundations that funded the studies were also greatly funded by a lot of these left-wing figures, and a lot of these figures who are known to be anti-ivermectin. And then you start looking into the study and start looking into the data a little more, and then you start to see, even on the study's publishing site, when you see it, when they published it in the newspaper, hey, we're looking for X amount of this for that, the thing that they were looking for was I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was crazy. It was something you wouldn't even believe. Like the publishing thing wasn't even for the study that was conducted, and it was completely backwards. And it was like, dude, it took me 3 hours to find this. No one else is able to basically like debunk this study that was funded by basically NGOs and corporations. I mean, but that's what they do, though. And I think they get away with it because they own the media. So there's no one who's going to actually do the real journalism except for like a few independent journalists. And nobody watches those people.
Yeah,
because
and then you just say they're crazy. Oh, and then you know what you do? They also own the media, and they have the tech companies. So they get Wikipedia to say, oh,
yeah,
so it's a far-right journalist investigating the benefits of whatever it is, or the narrative that doesn't agree with what us. So they label them stuff. Now it's funny,
or they'll just censor them so then the information can't get out.
Yeah, and I'm not saying I agree with James O'Keefe on everything. He's probably more conservative and right-wing than I am. Obviously, I don't see him at this conference, so I'm not sure if he's a libertarian, but he says some libertarian stuff, which is cool. But if you look at what he says, what they say about him on Wikipedia, it's far right. He's a far right guy. But they don't tag left-wing journalists like that. They're not like,
I'm going to give you a perfect example.
There's no hard left. Isn't that interesting? All the journalists out there and all the opinions, there's no hard left. There's no strong left. There's no tough left. They even wrote a hit piece on the Mises caucus, actually. I looked, and they said, Mises is trying to bring people to the hard right. I'm like, what is the hard right? That sounds like a turn signal issue that you hit a mechanic up. Does that mean more freedom? Because if that's how you're labeling it, that's kind of how they label these people. Oh, he's a conspiracy theorist. He's hard right. He's crazy. He associates with this. He was on Alex Jones one time. I'm like, okay, well, fine, whatever. It doesn't matter. But it's ironic to me that there's no hard left. Where's the hard left?
Yeah, I'm getting ready to show you some. Hey, Kareem, do you think after this you could just send me this video clip?
Just this video clip?
Yeah, just a video, because my I'm recording on something else and there's going to be a bunch of fuck ups and I don't feel like editing.
Yeah, I can definitely try to. I just need to download it from YouTube. I might have to do it though after I get back.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. No rush. Anyways, here's what I wanted to show. So Vosh, let's go to Vosh first. Okay, so Vosh Wikipedia. If we go to Wikipedia right here, Vosh Ian Kuczynski, better known as Vosh, is an American YouTuber and Twitch streamer known for debating and discussing politics online from what he describes as a libertarian socialist perspective. Is best known for his live stream debates and alt-right figures such as Stephen Sargon of Akkad. And so I'm trying to see. So and then right here, personal information, education channels, Vosh. Okay, so that's what they say right there. I'm trying to find, there was another part. Could you mimics? mimics the style of right-wing YouTubers and utilizes similar video titles so that his videos are suggested by recommendation algorithms to those at risk of radicalization, a common strategy employed by left-wing breadtube community on YouTube. That's what I was looking for. So he's a left-winger, and it even says it's describing him as what he calls himself, which is a libertarian socialist, which I find a complete contradiction. But anyways. So let's go to the other one. Let's go to James O'Keefe. So this one is James O'Keefe is an American political activist and provocateur who founded Project Veritas, a far-right activist group that used techniques to attack mainstream media organizations, progressive groups. Both O'Keefe and Project Veritas have produced secretly recorded undercover video. O'Keefe gained national attention for selectively edited videos. And that you can just keep going down here and see far right, far right, far right, far right. It's everywhere, far right. But then you go here, you go to the other one that has Vosh, and anything saying socialist is pretty close to as far left as you can get, in my opinion. What other than anarcho-communist, which I mean, other
you could
than
be
that,
an authoritarian communist, just like
yeah, I guess
that's
you're
a little bit more worse. But,
like you can get more totalitarian than just socialist. I'm not saying that. You can get really totalitarian, but I'm just saying, as far as the spectrum goes, Vosh is a libertarian socialist, and he every left wing box he checks it off. Every left wing, and he's even had his comments on let's say destigmatizing, how should I put it to be fair to him, destigmatizing pedophilia, and that he thinks that pedophiles should be treated with not harsher sentences because that will then cause more pedophilia, and that pedophiles need to be understood. He's sort of a pedophile apologist, and that is a little bit of hyperbolic. I don't want to say his exact words, but he has made those cases, and he's not the only leftist that has. But anyways, he's very, 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 very left. He voted for Biden. He voted for Bernie. And he's also called for a complete revolution as far as the pretty much every system and institution you can think of in the United States. And he's called for complete revamping of the Medicare system. Left. He's far left. Okay? But they don't call him that. They don't call him far left. They actually call him by what he says he's called. They call him, he described himself as a socialist perspective, a libertarian socialist perspective. And then when you go to James O'Keefe, they don't give him, he calls himself a conservative, which I think is fair. He calls himself a conservative, and they call him far right. And he's not. Yeah. Okay, you know how much little James O'Keefe has done of his actual speaking of his political beliefs? He's done some, without a doubt, and he seems to be supporting. I haven't
really heard anything of what he says.
Yeah, but there's not.
I don't know what he is. The only way I can kind of tell is he going to a Turning Point USA event really doesn't mean anything because I'm sure some libertarians go there. I don't count Charlie Kirk as a libertarian, obviously. I don't exactly like conservative.
I don't even call him a libertarian. I think he's a fake libertarian. He's a conservative as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think he's a fake conservative. I do not like conservative Inc. I like the more traditional guys if you're going to do that, or just leave it alone and go somewhere else. That being said, James O'Keefe doesn't talk about his beliefs at all. He just gets people on camera and then he talks to them and asks them questions. That is, to me, the best form of journalism. Kind of like the domestic version of Julian Assange. And look, here's the thing. To me, it's just a tactic to scare people. It's just a tactic on semantic manipulation to get people scared. Because look, it's going to happen to everybody in this space who's fighting, in my opinion, if you're fighting for any kind of individual freedom or advocating for individual responsibility, they will come after you. How do I know that?
Yeah, and let's say James O'Keefe has been on Tim Pool maybe 3 times. Every time he's been on there, he doesn't wade much into his political beliefs. Usually he's on there from a story that he was leaking at the time, or when they fucking the FBI raided his home for
So
literally no apparent reason except that supposedly because he had the diary of Haley Biden, but it turned out it's on record that he already gave the diary to the FBI and didn't
yeah,
have it at
which
that time.
I was
That
like
people are
watching that.
disagreeing with him with that. Why did you give it up? And he
Yeah, like
said,
why you're telling me all these people? James O'Keefe does some weird stuff too. There at that point, him, Andy No, and Tim and Libby Emmons, I wanted to go there and flip the table over because he's like, yeah, I turned him in.
well,
I
he
didn't know
couldn't
the FBI
verify
was
it, I
corrupt and
guess.
I'd get arrested. I'm like, dude, the FBI, you didn't know they were corrupt. Like, what? That's the one of the most corrupt incidents. And then I don't know if Libby Evans said anything, so be careful. But Andy knows, like, yeah, that was a good move, James. You turn it in, and I'm like, stop encouraging him. That was, dude. If I have something the government, doesn't or do something bad, or to have something the government, um, would want, I'm not gonna be like, hey, yeah, call a CIA agent, bring him down to my house. I'm like, no, I don't associate with me. Why? Because even if you do the right things, even if you are principled, like Mises Caucus, they come after you. How do I know? I wanted to end on this article. I was in the airport, specifically Newark, and then Luke, credit to him, pulled this up. Southern Poverty Law Center. Are you familiar with them, Daniel?
Yeah, I'm familiar. I'm familiar with the piece, what they did during the Alex Jones banning, which was a basically concerted effort to get rid of Alex Jones from all media platforms. And it was so obvious what was going on. If Twitter banned him, if one thing banned him, no, but he was banned on one site, and that signaled to all the other social media is, okay, let's get rid of him. They all got rid of him almost instantaneously. And the Southern Poverty Law Center not only didn't defend Alex Jones, but said that he was a danger and should not be platformed. And since they didn't stick up for Alex Jones, and the ACLU, who has at one time sticked up for Nazis, has defended the right of Nazis to speak and for Nazis to not be censored, they did the same thing as the Southern Poverty Law Center and didn't defend Alex Jones and said that he was so dangerous, in fact, that he shouldn't even be platformed and granted the access to social media. So I think this
to me
group
is
in
ridiculous because as much as I don't like someone, if you think their ideas are bad, let their ideas come out in front. Then you can see them and say, man, this guy's ideas are bad. I don't want anything to do with him. How do I know this? To get a degree, I had to take elective courses. I did a classical liberal education, emphasis on the actual classical liberal stuff. Meaning I didn't just take computer science because that, as much as I like working on computers, it's good to be well-rounded. I took a World War II class. I had to read Mein Kampf. It's a piece of shit book. It's terribly written. Honestly, it sounds like basically your typical drivel of somebody who does not understand anything about culture. And I said, man, this is terrible. I don't want anything to do with this. And nobody else seemed to really like it. We got a consensus opinion, actually, in the class, and that's how you know. If you have good ideas, they'll work. If you have bad ideas, they won't work. People reject them. Or you go to places where people like your ideas and you have fun with that. But,
But that's dangerous. You know why that's dangerous? Because that is an aspect of the natural emergent phenomenon that we call the market. And the market dictates what ideas are good and bad. So what the government and what politicians who don't have good ideas do is they seek to destroy the market and be the market and control the market, because in the end, the market will always presuppose correctness, and that which is correct, which the market deems correct at one point, will not always be correct in the future. This is the case with slavery. This is the case with Jim Crow. This is the case with a lot of things, and there's a lot of governmental reasons as to why all that stuff happened that didn't help. The market will get things right, and it might not happen perfectly, but you can guarantee when your political elite, as Thomas Sowell calls me anointed, I really like that word, puts their finger on that natural emergent phenomenon and says, I'm God, because that's effectively what they're doing. Then the good ideas cannot come out naturally because they are censored and suppressed by the censors. And this is what Orwell warned against. Him and Huxley saw this happening, and they saw what happened in Germany, and what happened in the Soviet Union. And Orwell was best friends and close with the top communist elites, right?
Yeah,
They
like
hung
people
out with
always
them.
hit him up and they're like, man, Orwell wrote a good book. He just had some good insight. I'm like,
No,
if you're hanging out with these people and they're telling you exactly what they're going to do, it's not insight or fiction. He probably just wrote it the way he did. So it's not like, hey, I was sitting at a table with, Khrushchev and he said this. That's not a good idea. You want to put it kind of in code. So it's like, oh, okay, that's what the plan is, but you're not going to shout it out. Kind of like these elites do on the flip side, where they talk about, like, if you listen to what they say on the surface, sounds like they're trying to be good. Like, oh, we can control the future is ours. Like, we can help, shift society the way we want. We can do these global initiatives, like Schwabi's speech. What does that mean though in writing? Oh, you want more control, but they're not going to overtly say that. So just to like break down real quick, last thing. Then I'm going to go get something to eat and explore a little bit and get ready for.
and let's not forget that Aldous Huxley's brother, his name was Julian Huxley, who was a evolutionary biologist, a eugenicist, and an internationalist. His brother was basically a modern globalist, and his brother was telling Aldous Huxley of all these ideas that there was going to be a technological elite, which then John F. Kennedy quoted Aldous Huxley in a speech in the 60s, warning of the technological elite, and that he had all this plans, and that everything was going to be ceded to a global authority, that things were going to be global in the name of peace. And his brother was a eugenicist and was a high-ranking elite, and he was telling all this, and he was like, whoa, what the fuck do I do with this information? So then he writes Brave New World and basically puts the information that his brother's giving to him and that other elites around him are telling him, and they're just telling him this is what's going to happen. They're going to decrease the population. There's going to be a global authority, and nation states will basically be effectively gone. And so he can't just put that out there. So he had to write it in a fiction book to encode it.
Come on, Daniel. That the fact checkers say that's partly false. Independent fact. By independent, I mean funded by Bill Gates.
Yeah, independent. You mean the fact checkers who work for Facebook?
I'm not going to go on this story. Tim Pool talked about it. Apparently, I don't doubt this. Bill Gates was buying anti-ads to fight with Elon Musk.
Yes, Breitbart reported it.
I don't know if that's true, but
it is.
But here's the thing. It's just funny to me to see these two guys duke it out. I'm not taking sides, though. I'm not necessarily saying I'm team Elon or Gates, because they both do things that I think are weird in the transhuman realm. But if I had to pick one, it's probably team Elon, because at least
he wants more people.
Yeah. Even that, like, I'm not so privy. You have to have more or you have to have less.
Yeah.
I would say this. If you're capable based on what you want to do, like, it's your life. So me saying, Dan, have like 50 kids, you're like, okay, have 2. I want 2. Oh no, I just want 1. I want 3. Okay, whatever you want and you're capable of handling, I think is okay. So I'm not. Yeah, he does want more people. He also does want to do that Neuralink stuff and some other things that I think are weird. So I'm not picking a side with those two.
I hope he gives it to Biden. Biden should be the runner-up for Neuralink.
Biden should be, honestly, the runner-up for the next retirement home. But the Southern Poverty Law Center is scared. Why are they scared? I found this article. This is the last thing I want to cover.
When was this recent?
Yeah, this is real recent. I don't know. Sorry, date. May 25th.
Oh, yeah. This is a hit piece is what it is. It's a hit piece.
This is fresh off the press. It's a piece of crap. What are they saying? I'm going to summarize it here because I'm going to explain what they're saying. I'm going to explain why I'm here and why this is BS. So they're saying the Libertarian Party, the LP, are concerned about the Mises Caucus winning control of the party. Oh, my God. We'd actually have real libertarians that follow Ron Paul type principles, ushering an era of collaboration between the U.S. largest third party and the hard right movement inside the Republican Party, which is complete BS. I don't even like the Republican Party. I want to infiltrate them and rip them apart, the GOP apart, and find a way to free people from these neocons, from people like former President Donald Trump, from Eye Patch McCain. And if people are offended that I'm saying that, I don't care. So they're saying they're espousing hateful rhetoric, but they don't give any examples. Okay, they said something mean online. Show me. And they're saying, should they win, they'll take over a party that averages 1% of the vote, because we have candidates that do that and people that do not really espouse good messaging. And they say peaking at 3.3. Yes. The
That's
reason,
terrible. Look at what Canada's Freedom Party or People's Party did. They were at like what, I think 12 or
yes, something like that
12%,
with
something like that.
PPC.
Yeah.
Let me check. Maxime Bernier didn't do too hot either. So I'm not going to go. Here's the thing.
It was at least 8% though. I know that.
Okay. Whatever percent it was, I'm not going to get super hung up on numbers. It's not a great percent. But the reason they're not saying this is because we had weak messaging that catered to primarily the left and identitarian circles, which did not help us. Now they're saying, oh, Joe Biden won less than 1%. I don't care. You know why? Because if my candidate is better and I voted for them and your candidate lost, that's too bad. And actually, yes, it didn't work out for liberals when I voted for Gary Johnson, but it did work out for people when I voted for JoJo. And it's funny now, the left was all excited. Thanks, Green, for voting for JoJo. I'm like, it's not, I don't like you guys. I didn't do it to get rid. I did it because I think that's the principal stance. And then they said they've already won control over influence in several states, including Arizona, New Hampshire. This is all true. Pennsylvania, Colorado, Florida, and California. And yeah, you know why? The reason they're not saying the reason that we're winning is because we actually have the numbers of people who are principled. Now they're saying, oh, we're going to be in Trump's orbit and things like that. Nobody in the Mises caucus that I know really, really likes him or is even a fan, to be fair. They might say, okay, he was better on energy policy or maybe this or that. That's fine. There are some people who probably argue he did something better than Biden. Not a high bar to pass, not even a high bar to really, aspire to. That's saying I'm like not 700 pounds or 800 or 500 pounds.
The bar is
means
not
I'm
very
healthy.
high.
Yeah, the bar is like, dude, it's lower than low. So they're making stuff up about, we're in Trump, we're friends with Trump and stuff. That is not true. Now, have there been some people who said like something bad to each other on social media? Yeah, I don't doubt that. That happens, and people have made mistakes here. And what's interesting is they're saying this is a hard right rise. Why are they saying this is a hard right rise? Because it is challenging their quote unquote democracy. But when they say democracy, what they really mean is their hegemony. That's why they say hard right. That's why they say that people are, conspiring and trying to take over this and that, and we're dangerous. Why? Because they're afraid that someone will break their political hegemony. There might be a resurgence in the LP through the Mises caucus that actually brings out the real Ron Paul libertarians.
Or even
What
worse.
that does is
Or even worse. That they worry that they're going to work with the Republican Party to then basically combine the Republican Party with the Mises Caucus and work to get their radical right-wing candidate, and that it's going to be a monopoly on the parties. That's what I think and they say it in the article, right? They're not worried about them winning as a unit by themselves, but they're worried how close their ties are to the Republican Party. Meaning, really, what they're worried about is that they could work with the Republican Party to then come to a compromise on candidates and put forth candidates whom the Mises Caucus also agree with and run them as a Republican who actually has a chance of winning. That's what I think they're really worried about.
Paul. If you run enough Rand Pauls, there's no Federal Reserve. There's no, money laundering. I'm sorry, foreign aid to Ukraine. My bad. There's no BS trade deals anymore. I'm not against free trade. I'm against things like NAFTA. There is no more bases around the world. There's no more trying to push your product on somebody and saying we're going to mandate this BS. So is it possible we work with people who are liberty minded in the Democrat and Republican space? Yeah. I'm not going to go against somebody, or I'm not going to not coalition with you because you have different views than me. If Jimmy Dore ran tomorrow under a non-interventionist foreign policy, I would support him. If Rand Paul ran tomorrow under the same thing, I would support him. I don't really care that much about the letter. I care what the person's going to do or is not going to do based on principle. And I think what they are scared of is the fact that there are principled people now rising who will challenge the hegemony of the LP, and it won't just be the puppet of, it won't just be another talking point of the establishment anymore. And that actually threatens them because we could have an actual real right-wing populist movement. And there hasn't been one, in my opinion, since Ron Paul. We've had two left-wing populist movements, and I don't think they did amazing, but they woke some people up. Let's have individualist populist movement, or one that's predicated on the individual is the core, or the family is the core function of society, and see how that goes. When I say too left-wing, because I consider Bernie and Trump pretty much left-wing.
Yeah.
They're just using different branding.
Come on.
Yeah, I do.
Trump, listen, okay, I see what you're saying there.
He's a Democrat, dude.
He's a Democrat in the sense that he printed an absorbent amount of money and that he did a lot of things that also Democrats were doing. But this is the problem with, I think, just left and right, the terms in general, liberal, conservative in general. I think that he had right-wing foundations, and I should say conservative ideas, but that when it came to him being in office, that he refused to stand on those principles and gave in to be liked by the left or be liked by voters. But I do think as far as ideas and conception goes, I think, and socially is where I think Trump really, 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 really looks like a liberal, like without a doubt. Like he looks like a liberal because when you look at what he did with being the first open conservative president to support gay rights, LGBTQ, and help get, African-American people, mainly African-American people, but wrongfully convicted people out of prison. That was a lot of stuff the left was talking about and has been core principles of theirs. So I do think he was very much a liberal. That's what I'll say. I'll say he was very much a liberal.
Some liberal stuff, and he had some left-wing ideology from, to me, if you peel away Bernie Sanders' economic ideas and his, they're not all that different.
That's true.
The branding is different. I will give you that. He uses different branding. Bernie Sanders will come with a socialist approach. He'll come with the more nationalist approach. But I want a real populist movement based on the individual. Those are still, take away left and right, those are still predicated on some type of collective, whether it's Make America Great Again or Bernie's thing or Build Back Better or,
let's make the individual great again.
Yeah. How about make America free again? And then in turn, making America free will make America great again. But the only way to do that, unfortunately, is to jump in the political domain. I didn't get that for a while. At first, I'm like, knocking doors is stupid. I don't want to do a podcast and talk about it. I don't want to do these events. I'm just a cool guy because I say politics is, they're all, liars and cheats, which is true. And then I put this ANCAP argument online and I win most times. So, woo. And that changes effectively nothing. It's fun, but it changes effectively nothing. So that's why I'm here at Reno, because in my opinion, after Ron Paul was done running, the Libertarian Party started to go wayward and embrace a lot of identitarian politics, which Rothbard and Nolan, the original creators, never intended. So this week and this weekend, I'll be working with everybody in the MC to bring in a principled return of the Libertarian Party, not the hard right. What they mean by the hard right is something that is if they're really going to say left and right, take left and right away. What we're predicating this on is, yes, a hard focus that the individual, like Jordan Peters says, is the nucleus of society, because only the individual is able to act, think, reason, and move about the world and create things. A collective is fundamentally an idea, and it's a mathematical abstraction. So with that, I'm live from Reno. I'm going to go get something to eat and rock out, but I really appreciate your time, Daniel, and we can do a
As
few more of
always.
these before I depart. You got
Yeah, well, definitely. And like, if we can get like even someone on, like, I think one thing that that you
pull Ron
pointed,
Paul in my
yeah,
room.
well,
Ron
just for a
Paul,
little
talk
bit,
to Daniel.
yeah, no, just for a minute, I'm not asking, I'm not gonna
You
have
could.
like
I could. I actually
the,
could. My Facebook Live should be allowed. I should be actually allowed the day tomorrow to be live, or Friday.
yeah.
So I could do
We
that.
can definitely get it and shoot. Just message me a link. Like if you're obviously busy and you're going on and you run into someone real quick and you want to do something, just send me a link. I'll join. Because it'd be cool to actually meet Ron Paul, even if I'm not there and can't shake his hand, can't
Yeah.
look at him. I'd still love to meet him through this and just tell him how much I appreciate him. And I think how much that the seed he planted is starting to sprout. That's what I think. That's what I really think, is that what Ron Paul planted was a seed, and that the Mises Caucus is a part of that tree. And then there's going to be even more things to come out of the Mises Caucus. Hopefully, the Mises Caucus, and I don't necessarily mean it in that name, but the ideas of the Mises Caucus overtake the Republican Party. That's what I'm hoping. Just completely overtake it, almost consume it. And I think it's possible.
I think it's possible, and it's going to happen this weekend. This is what's going to happen this weekend. I'm not going to say everybody in the Libertarian Party is going to have to espouse Mises views. I welcome actually debate. Like I was debating somebody I found in the airport, and saying, hey, I don't think the woke plank should be in libertarianism at all. If you want to be woke yourself, do it in your own time, but you have to put decentralization as a value above that. But if your whole life view is, oh, I am this because I have this
Yeah,
preference in
political
somebody
correctness has no place, has
in the Libertarian Party.
absolutely no place in the
But
Libertarian Party.
and here's the thing, I'm not even being mean. If you don't like that, okay. The nice thing about freedom is you have options. Go to the Democrat Party, and I'm not even recommending that. Don't go to the Democrat Party. I'm just messing. If you really have identitarian beliefs and you like decentralization, go to the Green Party or Andrew Yang's Forward Party, because that will cause more problems for the Democrats. Actually, we're going to cause more problems for the Republicans, because we have a lot of their views, and we're going to come and say, well, they're not really that good on this. They're not really for small government. We're actually for conservative when it comes to spending and small government. And the reason I say Trump is not a conservative, and I can definitively say that, is because I look at one factor. Did the Trump administration make government bigger or smaller during his tenure? If you made it bigger, you're not a conservative. You're not conserving. Even if you switch departments around and take out the EPA and put stuff here, if you make government bigger, you're not a conservative. If you don't increase the size of government, which is good, or bring it down, which is ideal, then maybe you are.
Has anyone even done that? I mean, really?
Calvin Coolidge didn't do much when he was in office, which is
That's
cool.
true. That's so long ago. Like, oh my
Yeah,
God.
it's like he just chilled and like, I ain't doing nothing. Like, okay, like the best president didn't do anything, if that tells you anything. He's just like, hey, I'm Calvin, I'm your president.
I would say Ronald Reagan, but he definitely did expand government.
Yeah,
He
so
did
that's the
do
problem.
some conservative things as far as
Okay.
certain things are concerned, but he did definitely expand government.
I'm not going to argue, and I'd never argue that, okay, Trump or Lincoln or Reagan or I can't really argue. Bush to me is a complete leftist, but that's
I
all
think
can
he's just
think
an
of.
evil person. Bush in
Yeah,
general.
and he's just an evil psychopath. Like we can see that. Like he's laughing about what he did. So you could argue definitely they had some conservative views, but when it comes down to it, I look at, if you're a conservative, you need to bring government down, or at least not increase it. But that doesn't seem to really be
Yeah, like Jefferson, Washington, all those OG people who they were real fucking libertarian, more real libertarians than like anyone that's ever been president in recent years. Calvin Coolidge is a good example. He did very little as far
Coolidge is
as
a good
government.
example.
Yeah, he is a good example,
And
actually.
then that's about it, to be honest, just to get perspective on like the government just expanding. Hopefully with the Mises taking over the LP, we can start to stop that, or at least put a wrench in the gear wheel so that we have buy enough time with messaging to turn things around. That's my hope. That's why I'm here. And I will catch you guys later. I'm going to go get something to eat, Daniel, and
All right.
catch you soon. Live from
Shoot.
Reno.
Take it easy.
Take it easy.